Good evening, America. I'm your host, Dan Pino. And on tonight's Action 54321 news channel, we have a special alert. New recreational marijuana sweeping the nation. Is it a fad or is it here to stay? I don't know. Let's send my online correspondent out to the field to get a real answer. Take it away, Dan.
Not coming.
Here we go. We got a lot coming. Go get it.
Pressure me. You should have. It's not dark enough.
Okay, I'll put it in. Well, there you have it. The people's choice. Marijuana.
All right. Good one, Dan. A bunch of honks. That's not real telling. Maybe we should check the poll. Yeah, we did an online poll. Let's see those numbers. Yeah. Okay, those numbers are pretty weird. Are you saying that everyone except your parents voted yes? Yeah. All right. I guess those results are a little inconclusive. Crunch the numbers again. Just crunch them. Alright. I did an investigative scoop, and we didn't need Scooby-Doo to solve this mystery. I think I was able to solve it myself. So let me just crack these knuckles. We can get right into it. Here we go. Hello, and welcome to my senior project. What you just saw was a goofy intro that I hope you chuckled at, because in these times of the coronavirus, laughter is important, especially to me. But our project essentially is about marijuana legislation, the brief history of marijuana in the country, what other states and districts have been doing legalizing it recreationally, what other countries have done to legalize it, and how I would legalize it if I was in charge of a state or city or any area, really. So I basically will start off, this little brief, very complicated history of marijuana. It was used for hundreds of years. It's not a shocker there. The hemp, the plant that the marijuana leaf stems from, it's the same plant. It's called hemp. It has a lot of various uses. Rope, paper. I go in and I talk about how paper was originally made out of hemp, and it was very good paper. The Declaration of Independence is signed on it. I'm not going to get into the history of paper, but hemp was being used, and it's still used. It's very popular. And then Prohibition started. After Prohibition, World War II started, and then by then, pretty much every state had regulated marijuana to a certain extent. Then by 1970, it was banned for any use by the Controlled Substance Act when Nixon enacted the war on drugs with the Controlled Substance Act. Marijuana took a brief hit. However, didn't stop important people from partaking in it. President Clinton, President Bush, and President Obama, past three presidents besides Trump, have all used it and have been pretty vocal about using it. And Trump hasn't said he used it, but Donald Trump Jr., Don Jr., as he likes to be called, is trying to convince his dad to help push for marijuana legalization federally. So we're seeing a lot of good things happening in the realm of marijuana legalization. I'm happy. I'm sure a lot of people are happy. A lot of people, like my parents, they don't want it legalized. But let's just keep going further, shall we? So a big portion of why I think marijuana should be legalized is not because I even personally like marijuana. I don't care if you do or don't, But if other things that are less harmful are fully legalized recreationally, there's really no reason why marijuana should not be, to an extent, based on states' rights issues. Federally, of course, it should be decriminalized, and this is where it comes to Schedule 1 drugs. So there's a few Schedule 1 drugs: heroin, LSD, ecstasy, and magic mushrooms, and marijuana. This means that the federal government still thinks that it is more dangerous than cocaine, meth, Oxycontin, and Vicodin. Yes, let me say that again. According to the federal law, Schedule 1 drugs, Schedule 2 drugs. Schedule 1 drugs are essentially seen as drugs with no real medical use. Yeah, despite medical marijuana being used everywhere in the country now. Not everywhere, okay, but a lot of places. It's basically, the government's still saying that cocaine and meth have more medical uses than marijuana. That's not right. We need to change that. So, how do we go about changing it? What should we change? Why should we change it? Well, clearly the majority of the country thinks that marijuana should be legal. I mean, it is safer than alcohol. If the majority of Americans think that marijuana is relatively safe, and the majority think it should be legal, why is the federal system so far behind? Good questions, Dan. I know, Dan. So the war on drugs is where the modern problem became rampant. Right? In the late 1960s, a bunch of soldiers came home from the Vietnam War. They got addicted to heroin. And in an effort to combat this, President Nixon decides to declare drugs public enemy number one in America. So June of 1971, a bunch of federal agencies get consolidated together to what we know now as the DEA, Drug Enforcement Agency. They combined three agencies: the Office for Drug Abuse, Law Enforcement, the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs, and the Office of Narcotics Intelligence. Pretty simple, bring them together. In the early years, the war on drugs was a small part of the federal budget, and it was small. But then the incarceration rate was also low. Then President Reagan decided to take charge to hopefully end the problem, so he greatly expanded the efforts. And then this raised the incarceration rate, not rate, but total incarcerations from 50,000 in 1980 to 400,000 in 1997. There was a Just Say No campaign in 1984. This was Nancy Reagan's her big push, Just Say No. This was happening during the crack epidemic. It did not prove successful. The media did whip everyone into a panic about the dangers of crack. Then there was an Anti-Drug Abuse Act, which gave $1.7 billion in additional funds to the war on drugs. Many people think of this part of the war on drugs being pretty racist because 80% of crack users were African American. That'll come up in topical conversations all the time. The incarceration rates are slowly declining thanks to bipartisan prison reform efforts as well as societal changes. Some of these changes are thanks to new drug laws, especially in regards to marijuana drug laws. So even Donald Trump is getting on board with laxing these drug laws and trying to get people out of prison. And I say even Donald Trump because if he's on board, what are you doing? A lot of people don't like the guy, but he's trying. Not be as good as you want it to be, but he's trying. Better than nothing. My whole thing is, as you saw previously on I tried doing a poll, I don't have that big of a scope, but from what I did, the only people that voted no on it were my parents. Everyone else was under the age of 30 or under the age of 40, technically. A couple 30-year-olds, they might get a little mad. But everyone, my generation, has basically been growing up with marijuana being so commonplace that it's definitely going to be legalized federally by the time I'm 40, I'm willing to bet. States are still doing great, though. So, yeah. The Roaring 20s are happening again. I like that. I think that's cute. But this time, the 20s will be for economic advancements and prison reform instead of depression. You know what? We might get a depression. I wrote this a month ago. Holy cow. Anyway, looking up, we had President Obama commuting sentences, the First Step Act, commuting more sentences with Trump, like I talked with before. That's all great. So, in November this past year, House Judiciary Committee approved a bill that would lower the federal grip on marijuana. It's pretty great. It's called the Schedule I Controlled Substance Act. The bill would let states enact their own policies, improving their states' rights, but also offers the incentive to clear criminal records and a 5% tax on all marijuana products that would go to providing job training and legal assistance. That's pretty big. The amount of people that get locked up again is high. We'll briefly look at it. So Barack Obama came into his presidency in 2008. He was a supporter of traditional marriage, and then he flip-flopped and became a champion of gay rights. I liken this to, we could have a president that comes into the presidency originally against marijuana and then champions marijuana. I don't like that kind of politician, but it is effective and gets the job done, whether you like it or not. It's not that ethical, but that's kind of what I say. And then let's skip through. There's many cities and states that have already done it. Yeah. Starting with the most notorious place. Everyone's high in California, right? Wrong. But, right. Wink. Under Proposition 64, the adult use of marijuana in California became legal. The act is known as Adult Use of Marijuana Act. But here are the nuts and bolts, if you will. You have to be over the age of 21 to possess it and use privately. And if you can give away up to 1 ounce of marijuana as a gift only to people 21 and over. That's huge. You can grow up to 6 plants. Okay, keep that in mind. 6 plants. Plants, by the way, are like 2 to 3 feet tall. About that, yeah, roughly. Commercially, you can grow as much as you want, as long as you distribute and sell it in state licensed facilities. There's more legislation passed with the Medical and Adult Use of Cannabis Regulatory and Safety Act, known as MAUCRSA. It's also worth noting that local businesses can be restricted or outright banned by city and county laws. But currently, in the massive state of California, there are 630 marijuana shops. It's a lot. That's a lot. There's some tweaks to current legislation that can open up another 2,000, though. That would be the most in the country by far. Not even close. That's called Assembly Bill 1356. And it basically allows the stores to be equal to liquor stores. And that's big because how you have liquor stores and marijuana stores are different currently. So they want to make them the same. I'll go over that more in detail with the other states as well. The jobs in California, it's hard to find exactly the total number. But up until 2020, but it's around 200,000, which is great. Everyone wants to lower the unemployment rate, so that's always good. A lot of people often will ask you how much tax you can generate. In 2018, California state government made almost $350 million in tax revenue just directly from marijuana-related services. That's a lot of money that was not in the budget before, and it just happens to be there now because they made some businesses. To me, that's nuts. Everyone I was talking to, that was kind of like their huge reason for wanting to have it recreationally legalized. I thought it would be fun to go from what people like to nickname California Commie-formia because it's so leftist, but if you go right to Nevada, so Nevada, home to Las Vegas, biggest casinos in the world, some of them, super lax gun laws, a lot of right-wingers, no income tax, no state income tax, but now they have completely legalized marijuana. Who would have thought? It's a little bit different, though, so let me go over some details. It's still 21 and over. That's always important. You can, possess up to 1 ounce for personal use and an 1/8 ounce, essentially in like oils and cartridges, or like a cookie. Like if you're walking around with a cookie or gummy bears, it has to be an 1/8 of an ounce. It is illegal to consume any marijuana products outside private residence, which includes casinos, schools, colleges, bars, and all federal property. That also includes dorm rooms, hotel rooms, and all bars. That's pretty standard. I would say during my research, I didn't see a single place that lets you smoke in public. I would like to just say that right now. It's pretty much, if you're in public smoking weed, you're still getting fined. But not arrested. You will be fined, though. Yeah, so like I just said, $600 fine for smoking weed in public. That's a lot of money. Or if you're caught with more than 1 ounce, it's a Category E felony. 1 to 4 years in prison and up to $5,000. That's still a lot. Probation is usually possible. I mean, it's always possible. But marijuana can be purchased from a licensed dispensary, and that should not be a problem for anyone living in Las Vegas, since in the city alone there's 50 stores. If you live more than 25 miles from a dispensary, you can grow it yourself, which I think that's a cool law. It's definitely, cool for the citizens. But look at this. Look at that. Up to 6 plants per person and up to 12 per household. California was only 6. Yeah, so if you live with a bunch of roommates, you can start a small marijuana farm in your building. Which, I don't think is a smart choice to have being done, because then you're just going to sell it. I'll get to that later. Yeah, so under the law, extension of your home, like your car, however, the laws surrounding marijuana are that as soon as you pick up your purchase, you must keep it in your car out of sight, ideally. Also, no one in the car can have consumed any of the marijuana until you get to your home. That's pretty big, because a lot of people, like your parents, will say, well, we don't want people smoking weed and then driving. And it's really hard to find the statistics about it, because weed, A, stays in your system, and B, you can't do the test when you pull someone over. So it's always kind of murky. You have to just kind of see their glazed eyes and their really weird demeanor to assume they're high. So the statistics are really iffy. But yeah, if we can make... Sorry for that. Yeah, so once technology gets better and we can start pulling people over, and if you suspect they're high, you can do like a blow test. Basically, we don't have the current technology to pull people over and see if they're high quick enough. Once that gets better, though, we won't be having a problem. So just wait on Elon Musk to invent that too. So that's a big problem. Another thing is the taxes. The taxes really haven't increased any crazy. Wholesalers pay 15% excise tax. And then retailers pay a 10% excise tax. So that's a big deal, because you'll see the next place I go into, which is Illinois. 11th state to legalize it recreationally. Pretty big. 21 and older, of course. 2020, boom. This year, I have a lot of friends that live there, and they said it was great. But they also said that because the taxes are so high, I mean, let's just go through this real quick. I'll get to the taxes afterwards. 30 grams, it's essentially an ounce. 21 and older, you don't need an ID or anything special. Smoking one's own home and on site in some weed stores, no public. Of course, no school, nowhere near anyone underage. Actually, not near an on-duty cop, firefighter, school bus driver, or corrections officer. I think that's pretty funny. Private businesses and college campuses are up to the owner. I think that's huge because if a college lets you smoke in your dorm room, expect the kids to want to go to that college. The home growing in Illinois, not a thing unless it's medicinal, so you have to have a doctor's note for that. But the biggest policy is what I was trying to get to earlier, but it's as high as 40% tax rates on products. So if you're spending $10 on weed, you're spending $4 extra on taxes. This has been pretty much a disaster for them. A lot of people are just getting weed from their illegal drug dealers because, one, it's just as much or cheaper because there's no tax on it, and two, once you do the drug deal with your drug dealer, a cop cannot do anything as long as it's under an ounce. So if you're walking around with an ounce or lower illegally, what's a cop going to do? It's already legal. So that's a huge problem, which I touch in my own personal legislation. But I think the funniest offender, technically the worst, but it's just crazy that Canada legalized it, the Ontario government, and they managed to lose money selling marijuana. Let me put this in perspective. California gained $350 million in tax revenue. California has almost an equal population of Canada. So Canada basically is losing out on $350 million a year in tax revenue if they just followed California's blueprint. I think but they managed to lose money. Not all of Canada, Ontario specifically, but you can see here, they legalized the adult use of marijuana. At the beginning, there were just a bunch of supply chain problems and product shortages. A lot of these have gone away, however. A big thing was pull the cap on the number of licenses they handed out, and then 2019 CEO, the Ontario Cannabis store, stepped down. This cast a doubt in public opinion. That always happens when a CEO steps down. And then Rod Phillips said the blame was largely put on the initial startup costs. And then due to legislation, marijuana being a new venture, the required investments for setting up a system that could achieve certain objectives. These objectives are different than the ones we had in America. So yeah, it failed pretty hard there. And then the youth to combat illegal sales on the black market. These systems and investments are the reason that Ontario would go on to eventually lose money selling marijuana, which is unbelievable to me and every single person I told. So I thought it was very noteworthy to add it in my paper. A very curious case. I like that sentence. I use that one specifically, curious case. Because in D.C., America's capital, they passed the Initiative 71, late 2014. 5 years later, everyone's still confused about it. But let me try to break this down very simply. It's legal for anyone over the age of 21. Shocker, everyone has that. Possess 2 ounces. That's double most places. And smoking on private property. We've been through that. Adults can transfer, give 1 ounce to a person as long as no money is transferred and you are over 21. It's still a crime to have more than 2 ounces, like previously stated. It is illegal to smoke in public or anywhere the public is invited, such as concerts, restaurants. That goes for, unfortunately, all the monuments. I know, guys. I know, it's sad. I know. We want to smoke our weed at the Lincoln Memorial, but we can't yet. I just thought it was funny. Finally, it's still illegal to operate machinery and drive under the influence. Shocker. It's not a shocker. It was a joke. But the most crazy part is, how do you buy marijuana if you cannot sell it? I mean, it's simple, right? You can gift it. So what does DC do? You give it away as a loophole. So you'll go to a vendor. Mind you, you cannot, there are no stores. So what they do is like an Uber. You will order it online, and then someone will drop it off to you. But you don't order the weed, okay? You order a magnet, maybe some sunglasses, a t-shirt, and then as a gift, they give you weed. I'm not kidding. That's the genius laws we have. But they have these pop-up events. It's a flea market. So you're walking around, and you're like, oh, wow, you got that purple Kush? What? Can I buy it? No. But you got a really nice t-shirt with the Grateful Dead logo on it. I'll take that. And then he says, oh, I really appreciate you partaking in my small business. Here, let me give you this gift. Also to accompany your purchase. And the gift's marijuana. How is that not funny? That's amazing. All right. So those are the most notorious states, countries, districts that have legalized recreational marijuana. These are pretty much the most cited laws and often will be cited on news shows, YouTube videos. But how are the statistics looking? Illinois, cannabis taxes among nation's highest. I mean, I showed you that earlier. Nevada's in the middle. It's pretty low. I mean, look at Alaska. That's nuts. I'm a libertarian, but I'm not that libertarian. You know what I mean? The number one priority, in my opinion, needs to be taxes. Because if you don't get the taxes right, everything else essentially is doomed to fail. If the taxes are too high, they will just go to the underground to get their weed, and then you can't do anything about it. It just props up black market sales of drugs. Horrible, terrible idea. It's like the worst thing because you're not even curbing the problem. You're making it easier. And then the other problem is when taxes are too high on products like tobacco and alcohol, it's usually a way to deter people from using them. It's known as a sin tax. It's pretty anti-competitive, drives people to the black market. It's hard to, make alcohol legally, but it's really easy to grow a plant. It's anti-competitive, anti-capitalist. It's just not a good look. Like in Philly, we have a soda tax, sugar tax, and then people just go right over the city limits to buy their soda. It just hurts small businesses. It hurts businesses in Philadelphia. It's not doing anything. You have to get the taxes right or it's going to fail. It's my biggest thing. Like I said before, Chicago made their tax really high, screwed it up. California, despite being many legal weed stores to buy from, most sales are still done illegally. Taxes are too high. And then the products are just expensive there because it's legal weed, so you got to pay good money to get it. But most people don't really care, so they would just go from their dealer that they know. So that's me. Taxes, big concern. And then the next concern is like, how many stores do you really want? When you talk to people, you say like, oh, let me just use an example. This very famous comedian, Dave Chappelle. He has this story about when he's from the ghetto. He's from the DC ghetto. And he's like, how do I know I'm in the ghetto? Look out the window. Liquor store, gun store, gun store, liquor store, liquor store, gun store. Most people that live in nice areas and pay a lot of taxes do not want their area to look like that. So there's a lot of laws in this country where you cannot have a certain number of liquor stores or a certain number of gun stores in square mile radiuses. The same will be done with marijuana dispensaries once legalized. Because no one wants to live in a place where you have a weed store next to a daycare, next to a liquor store. It looks incredibly bad on society, and people do not want that. So you have to put in some decent laws. I live in Wilmington. You cannot have more than one liquor store per square mile. Really, you can't have one bar that only sells liquor per square mile. Put it that way. So if your liquor sales outweigh your food sales, there's only one store per square mile. A lot of people don't know that, so I really wanted to hammer this home in this video. I think people need to be more informed on that because they think that all bars operate the same and they don't, and all states and laws operate the same and they don't. So 1 square mile, I talk about it really good here. Main Street, University of Delaware. It's basically everything I just said. So 1 dispensary per square mile, same as the ratio bars, not to be confused with bar restaurants. So with that, this leads me into my own marijuana recreational bill. So citizens the age of 21 or over, the staple age, may purchase and possess 1 ounce of marijuana. 1 ounce. If you're over the age of 21, you may also grow up to 3 plants. Some places let you have 6. I think 3 is a fair number. But they have to be under lock and key. A house is fine. Which means you can't just grow them in your backyard. Gotta keep it safe. The first month of licensing, the Department of Taxation will only accept licenses from marijuana stores. Because if they know what they're doing, they won't screw it up. Makes it simpler. But that's only for the first month, okay? Rest of the licenses will open up. But you have to keep the establishments 1,000 feet from any school, nursery, things of that nature. Looks really bad when you have a school and then next door is a liquor store and then next door is a weed store. It's just not a good look. Brings property values down, things of that nature. Community centers, it just goes hand in hand. You got to base the population for the amount of establishments. It doesn't have to be 1 square mile necessarily, but you can't just have 45. You can't have a whole town with nothing but marijuana stores, to put it in perspective. I've already harped on that. 15% excise tax. That makes sense. You got to pay some taxes, but you don't want to do too much. An annual licensing fee. Depends on what type of license you're looking to acquire. That's basic boilerplate stuff, And then the government can instruct, enforce, and implement policies prohibiting driving or operating a vehicle. I don't know if certain suburbs want to allow their people to operate a forklift while high. I don't think it's a smart decision, but I'll let local municipalities handle that. Cannot sell marijuana to anyone or give it to anyone under 21. Schools, can't do it on schools, Department of Corrections, workplaces. If they allow it, sure. Basically, any public space, it's a no-go. Can't be smoking in a moving vehicle. Now, I wanted to say that because I feel like there could be a case where a man is smoking in a car out front of his house and something happens because, we've all heard horror stories. So I just wanted to put that down before anything bad happens. We can hammer that home, in court or with legislators. Maybe I'll talk to the police department and figure it out. But basically, I wanted to take the best of everything I've read, the safest of everything I've read, but also the best economically. And I think I did a pretty good job here. Everyone I've showed this to, they gave it 2 thumbs up. So I hope that is sufficient. I like that part. All right. With this, basically brings me into the final portion of the report. Just some basic key facts I want to harp on. The majority of the population of America is pro-marijuana in one way or another, whether that's just legalization or they actively use or they don't care if you use. But people are pretty much coming around to marijuana. I think getting the taxes right when you do this is a very big deal, because half the reason we're doing this is to eliminate the black market. I think it's important to eliminate the black market because international relations with Mexico would help. The import of drugs is huge. If we curb our drug trade, illegal drug trade, it'll curb their illegal drug trade, which will then, give the cartels less money. When cartels have less money, then they can't operate as strong in Mexico and other South American countries, and then the governments can be stronger, and then we can get better democracies, hopefully. It's a chain event. Also, I would like to lax the laws because I'm tired of having an overpopulated prison that then taxpayers have to pay for, and then these fathers get locked up and their kids grow up without dads, and then those kids join gangs because they don't have fathers or good influences. I'm not saying everyone, I'm just saying it happens, and it's a vicious cycle that when you legalize marijuana, it helps to curb. That's kind of why I'm passionate about it. I don't really care about smoking weed one way or another. I just think if alcohol is regulated fine, I mean, thousands of people get DUIs, but we don't get rid of that. It's still dangerous. Marijuana is much safer, so there's no reason why it should be classified as a Schedule I drug. All in all, I had a lot of fun doing this project. It's probably the most fun I've had in college doing any work. Thank you to my professors, Stangl and Kennedy. It was a pleasure. I hope you found the beginning funny, but also just a good intro in general. You guys know me pretty well. Thank you for watching. If you like my work, like, comment, subscribe. Why not? Send it to your friends. All right. Have a happy summer, everyone, and hopefully we'll be able to have classes in the fall. I'm out of here. We went to the Giant. We wore our masks and gloves, and we were studious citizens. And then we came out here, me and my cameraman, and, made a sign, honk if weed should be legal. So, there's my cameraman. Here's our director's set, and we're gonna make a movie. There's the director's set.
Action.
Movie time.
Go over there. We'll wait. No, we'll wait.